Day 313. Today there is several good news. First of all, the Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that the Ukrainians conducted several more successful attacks on Russian bases. This particular report focused on the situation in the Zaporizhia region. Here the Russians have relocated a lot of troops and equipment. As you remember, the Ukrainians had already struck the newly arrived forces before the new year. However, apparently, this was not the end. After the first series of strikes, the Ukrainians took some time to identify the next biggest areas of forces concentration, and it turned out that the most popular end destinations were Bazan, Pologe, Berdyansk, and once again Tokmak. As a result of the second series of strikes, the Russians lost around 250 troops and a dozen pieces of equipment. The General Staff specified that they had already confirmed that 175 Russians were hospitalized and that 12 pieces of equipment were destroyed. On top of that, the General Staff also noted that they had identified and destroyed one another ammunition depot in the region. If we add up the losses from the yesterday's precision strike on the Russian base in Makiyivka, then we can see that in 2 days, the Russians lost almost 1,000 people just from several Ukrainian precision strikes. By the way, yesterday's strike on Makiyivka could not be ignored due to its notoriety, and Russian sources confirmed that the Russians indeed placed 600 people in one building, just 20 kilometers from the front. They confirmed that this building also had a lot of ammunition in the basement, which detonated and amplified the destruction. They confirmed that the building was completely wiped out, although they still assert that only 70 people out of 600 died. One of the reasons why the Ukrainians were able to conduct such a successful series of precision strikes is simple. Before the new year, the Ukrainians hit multiple Russian objects deep inside Russian territory. On top of that, the information war seems to have been launched in order to emphasize the imminent threat that the Ukrainians pose to the historic Russian capitals, Moscow and St. Petersburg. Russian sources started increasingly reporting about the capabilities of Ukrainian drones and confirmed and amplified the anticipated threat. In order to minimize the risk of a successful drone attack on Moscow, the Russians moved a lot of air defense systems closer to it and deployed 2,000 people just for this specific task, inevitably compromising the safety of Russian military objects along the front line. The good news is also coming from the Bakhmut area. Here, a lot of developments happened south of the city. Last time, the Russians started storming Klishivka. The Russians established their positions along the tree belts and railways, but they struggled to advance on the settlement itself. If we look at the 3D map, we can see that there are a lot of hills in this area. At first glance, it seems like the Ukrainians are at a disadvantage, because they're located in the lowlands. However, the Ukrainians stepped back from the central part of the village and focused on holding the key defensive positions, which are located north, west and south of the village. This way, Russian attack groups that were attacking Klishivka in front would enter the lowlands and almost put themselves into a pocket. This is exactly why the first wave of attacks was successfully repelled, and that is why the Russians started trying to go around the village and attack the key defensive positions on the high ground directly. When it comes to the northern defense positions, here the Russians did not manage to cross the railways, and their attacks here have stalled. The same cannot be said for the southern defense position. Here the canal covers the Russian flanks, while they can advance along the tree belts from Kurdyumivka and Andriivka. Day after day, the Russian control over this region had been expanding, until the Ukrainians conducted a counterattack. Interestingly, the counterattack was directed down the chain towards Kurdyumivka. According to the Institute for the Study of War, later geolocated footage confirmed that Ukrainian forces entered the northwestern sector of Kurdyumivka. Geolocated footage posted on the 31st December showed that Russian forces were forced further west of Zelenopillia. This way, the Ukrainians gained access to the eastern side of the canal and forced the Russians that were taking Klishivka from the south to immediately step back, otherwise they would be shot in the back. So the Ukrainians effectively killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Overall, the Russians here lost weeks of progress, and their Bakhmut encirclement operation has stalled once again. But despite the lack of visible progress, heavy fights in this region continue. The Russians will definitely try to leverage their control over the area east of the canal to return back Kurdyumivka. So we'll see how things develop from here.